Hi, everybody. It's great to be with you again today. We're so excited to have you here. This is, oh my gosh, number 5 in
Uh,
the what is this? This is number 4 or 5? 4. We're
Four
number
with four
4.
with our conversations with
Yeah,
Peggy. Number 5 total.
I know. I keep getting confused. Okay, 4 or 5. It's the best of all worlds. We're here with Peggy, and we're super excited to be with you again today. This is, regardless of the number, we only have 2 more to do today and next week. This is it. So we're really excited to have you here, talk about another important topic on coping with dog loss in our series that takes place here on Thursdays at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And my name is Patty Quinn, just to give you a quick introduction, and I'm here again with Hillary Buchholz.
Hi, everybody. A little bit of background on Patty and I. We are the co-founders of We Heart Hounds, which was started to curate the best products and resources to give you and your pups the crazy good life together. So that's sort of our goal and why we started We Heart Hounds. And before we jump into things, if you guys could let us know that you can see and hear us okay, that would be fantastic. Just by hitting the heart or the like, whatever you want to hit, just, yeah. So if you could just let us know everything's on
Obviously,
track.
we've had some technology issues in the past, so it's always great to know that you can hear us and see us just fine. Thank you.
So today's topic is we're going to be discussing how couples can sometimes grieve differently the loss of their dog. And we, of course, have Peggy Haymes with us again today. And would you like to say hello, Peggy?
Hi, I'm glad to be here again. Kind of sad next week's the last time.
I know these have gone by so quickly.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know or are new to our series, Peggy Haymes is an amazing grief coach. She's helped a tremendous number of people really overcome some tragedies and loss in their life and work their way through a path of healing. And that's exactly why we're here today with everybody, to give you all that same opportunity. And so, that said, if you would like, and if you can, please comment and share your experiences as we go through the discussion. I think it just adds a whole lot to the conversation. And we don't know it all, right? We haven't lived every life and have had every experience, and everything that you all share with us is truly important and valuable, and we definitely cherish it. So add your comments in, and we'll catch them as they go, as we go, and we'll go from there. So let's see. I'm looking at my notes. I don't want to miss anything. We've got lots of good stuff to talk about today. One of the things that Hillary mentioned, that our topic is on how couples grieve differently at the loss of their dog. And I would just be curious if anybody has had that experience. And if so, kind of what were the circumstances? And if you could kind of share that with us, that would be great. And if you're watching the replay, feel free to do that as well. That would be nice. And then as that feedback is coming in, Peggy, why don't you go ahead and just get us started on the topic today? We'll just jump right in.
All right, I'm glad to. I actually just had a thought as you were talking. And we hadn't talked about this, but we're focusing on how the loss of a pet can affect a relationship. A spouse, a committed relationship, even a dating relationship. But if you're not in one of those kinds of relationships, know that it also can affect friendships too.
Right.
So if you don't have a spouse, if you don't have a significant other, you may want to think about, okay, have I had friends who have reacted in ways that were not helpful for me, and hopefully extrapolate some benefit from this discussion.
Right. I think that's a really good point. We have had some folks talk about that in our previous discussions, how friendships have changed because of the loss of a dog.
And a friendship can be a very long-term, a very emotionally intimate relationship. And when it kind of strikes the rocks when you've lost a pet, then it becomes a double whammy, that you've lost a pet and you've lost a friend.
Right. Right.
So to get back to relationships, relationships don't happen in a vacuum. They are affected by all kinds of stuff. If your spouse loses a job or you lose a job, it's going to affect the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And that's especially true when you lose a dog. Um, it's such, as we've been talking about it touches our heart so deeply. It can really strengthen a relationship as you kind of bond together through the loss, or it can put a really huge strain on the relationship if your significant other isn't understanding or doesn't approach the grief process in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely for sure. So I guess one of the things we shouldn't do is assume that our partner knows how we feel, right? I mean, we can't make assumptions that our friends even know how we feel, especially if they don't own pets or, have never had a loss of a pet before.
Well, this is in some ways, our conversation today is going to be like a microcosm of things that are true about relationships generally, but they get really focused in on when you lose a pet, when you've lost your dog. One of those is that you're right. None of us are mind readers. I used to tell my therapy clients that as a minister, I've done a lot of wedding ceremonies. Not one of them came with the ESP when I put the ring on the fingers.
Yeah.
You're not given this ability to read each other's minds.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody misses one of those clues, then we start thinking, well, if they loved me, they would know how I felt.
Right, right.
And boy, that's a big trap to get into.
Yeah. I think too, sometimes when you just open up and share the fact, because it's almost like a reminder, you're hurting and you're kind of in your own cocoon, that it's hard to remember they're hurting too. And like, okay, this is just a reminder, and it helps kind of connect the fact that, snap you out of it for a second and let you know, oh yeah, I don't know exactly what they're feeling. I can't expect that they would know exactly what I'm feeling. And it might be a little too much to ask. Like, I think it's just good. And even just saying those words, like, I was expecting this of you, letting them know, because they probably felt it, so just letting them know that is what you were doing. It relieves that tension for both of you, and can then kind of, okay, this is a safe place for us to come together and talk about how we're feeling.
Yeah. Well, and I know sometimes other circumstances are going on in life as well that compound how your reaction or both of your reactions might be. I mean, even just losing the dog can have health implications on, if you're not eating well or sleeping well, or maybe you already have health issues that make it difficult to, feel cheery and chippy, all, happy-go-lucky all the time. And then something like this happens, and then that really knocks you down. So I think there are just other circumstances to be aware of as well. So it's hard because, you kind of feel all hurt and comfortable sometimes in your hurt, and you want somebody to do is make you feel better, but they're hurting too, right?
Yeah.
It's I think this comment about talking about how we feel is so important, and to be able to do that in a non-accusatory way. You should know I feel like this. One of the things that affects how we feel and how we grieve is our experiences. And the families that we grew up in. You may have lost a pet as a child, and how your parents reacted to that, and what kind of messages you got about that. Your significant other may have grown up on a farm, and it was just like, hey, this is it. This is life. This is what happens. Suck it up and move on. I don't understand all of this weeping and wailing.
Right.
It feels really personal when you're hurting like that, but it really isn't. They're coming out of their context. of this is the way they learned how to relate to animals and death because they saw it a lot more. And they had different relationships with the animals. So part of it is two parts to talking about it. Part of it is being able to say, this is how I feel. The second part is being able to ask for what you need. Now, as much as that other person may love and adore you to death, they may not always be able to understand why you're thinking, why you're feeling the way you feel. Because let's face it, sometimes we don't understand why we're feeling the way we feel. So it's okay to say, I don't expect you to understand this. This may seem wacky to you, but this is how I'm feeling. And this is what I need from you. If you could help pick up some of the chores for a day or two, or if you could go to the vets when we need to pick up the ashes, or if you could be really kind on that day,
or I just need a hug.
Need a hug. I need to talk about our dog, and let's sit down one night after dinner and just share the stories. And I'm gonna cry, and that doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong if I cry. But this is what I need. And then to be able to invite the other person, maybe they need some things too.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's important to open up with each other and have those moments where you can, I think one of the things that you said that was important is telling people what you need. I think it's easy to say I'm upset, or I'll say it's easier to say I'm upset or I'm hurting or I don't feel all that great today about it. But I think it's even harder to ask for what you need to help you get through it. So I think that's a key component. And then, go ahead, Hillary.
And I think even just saying, I don't know, letting them know that you don't know what you need sometimes can help relieve that. And then you guys can kind of come to solutions together. So that can be really helpful as well. Just being open about the fact that I know I need something. I don't know what it is right now. Let's try to figure this out together.
Right. For sure.
And to be able to talk about together what you miss. What you miss about this dog. What was your favorite thing about this dog? Now that can be a little tough if you have a partner or a spouse who really didn't want to get the dog, or who didn't care for the dog. We have different relationships with pets, so that's one of the things that can cause difficulty. The dog was really yours, and the other person tolerated it.
Or just if the things in the relationship aren't going well, right, to begin with, and then on top of this, something, a tragedy happens, you lose your dog, and it could start to separate the two of you even more, or a friendship even more, right? If something like that was to happen.
Yeah, I mean, if your relationship is already a little rocky, if you're going through a tough patch, and let's face it, every relationship goes through a tough patch.
Yeah.
This can feel really devastating. If you're going through one of those patches where you're feeling like, I'm just feeling unloved. I don't think they really love me like they did. They've taken me for granted, whatever. And then you lose this dog who is one of your great loves, and you don't get the kinds of responses that you think you should, or the other person's even not really much interested, then it's like a magnet. It goes to that one place, and it's like, well, look, here's more proof. They don't really love me. Here you go. And what's tricky and dangerous about that is, again, it's thinking that you can read their minds, and it's making that assumption that because they're not responding in a certain way, they don't care, or they don't love, And what I hear from couples is sometimes the other person, again, they don't know what to do, or it can be scary and difficult
Mm-hmm.
to see someone you love in that much pain.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a fix it kind of a person, that is so hard to see them in pain and know that you can't fix this.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is some people just withdraw when they can't.
Yeah.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense to you guys?
Oh,
Absolutely.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you were talking, it's just listening to you talk about how, and my mind just went blank real quick for a second. But talking about how just the fact that opening up to one another, maybe not knowing what to do or how to say, I think it's a really vulnerable place. You're already feeling vulnerable from the loss, wounded, hurt, frustrated, angry, sad, lonely, all those feelings that we've talked about before. And then to have to take that extra step to tell your partner or your best friend or whoever, that you're hurting and you need help. You're making yourself even more vulnerable, because what if they say no, or what if they don't want to, or what if, I think a lot of those feelings or thoughts kind of run through your head. And so you kind of keep it inside, or you just, muster through, or, you've got to get through the day, the responsibilities of the day. So you just kind of play it off as if it's nothing, but really deep down inside, there's just this chasm that starts to grow between the two of you because you're really not communicating the way you should.
I think too, like sometimes if it's a relatively new relationship, that can be really challenging because
Mm-hmm.
it sort of amplifies, like under normal circumstances, you would have learned a bit more about, how do they deal with different stressful situations? How do they deal with difficult situations? But if you're sort of new to the relationship, sometimes it can feel for both people like,
Yeah.
I'm not acting like myself. This isn't normally who I am. I don't want them to see me like this, but I still need that help because this is a really difficult time in my life. So that can put a lot of stress and strain on new relationships as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really excellent point on both parts, right? On both parties. Because if you're new and that other person's hurting, like you don't know what to do or say, or how much should you, involve yourself in that healing process or be there for that person.
And the reality too is that having those kinds of conversations takes energy.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if you are, if you've been up all night because you've lost your dog and you're just brokenhearted, then you got to pull yourself together, get ready, put the concealer around your eyes so they can't see the dark circles, and kind of compartmentalize so you can go in, go to work, do your job, do whatever you got to do in the course of the day. Sometimes by the time you get home, you just don't want to deal with anything else. It's like you're exhausted. You have no emotional energy left. And so what can happen if you cannot just say that, I'm exhausted. I got nothing left. I just need to crash.
Yeah.
If you can say that, then the other person may interpret it as, well, they're shutting me out.
Right. For sure.
Yeah. And then you get that whole dance of, well, I'll withdraw. And then, well, they don't care because they're withdrawing. And, even if it's just to say, I'm worn out. I'm exhausted. I'm overwhelmed. I just need to fall into bed.
Right.
If that's what you can do, then do that.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear if there's anybody out either watching the replay or watching live now, if you've kind of been in this situation or the different stages of the relationship where this might have come up. I think it's really helpful to hear each other's stories. I think it helps to just let us know that we're not alone. Like all the feelings in the world, we can have all of them. They're all okay. And it's really nice to hear like, okay, I'm not the only one that's gone through this. I'm not the only one that's felt this way. So if you can share your stories, either in the comments of the replay or here live, we would really appreciate it. So.
Yeah. And things that you did that, helped you and your partner or friend or whoever work through it too. Success stories, I think, are huge, because then we're offering hope to others as we share, which is, I think, really important.
Absolutely.
I think it's important to remember that grief isn't a competition. And so you don't, it's not about proving who loved the dog more and who's more devastated by it. And it may look differently because we grieve differently. We have different lessons about grief that we've absorbed through life. We have a different relationship with the dog. If you were the one who did all of the medical care, it's going to look different if you didn't have that hands-on.
Right.
But I want to go back for just a minute to this idea that the loss is taking place within the larger context of the relationship. If it doesn't feel safe to you to talk about how you feel, I mean, we've been talking about talking how you feel, about how you feel. You may be in a relationship where that doesn't feel safe right now, where you feel like you're going to get made fun of.
Right.
You're going to be ridiculed for that.
Right. Or dismissed,
Or dismissed. Or it's minimized. The old "it was just a dog" thing. What are you doing crying? It was just a dog. So be really careful and really aware of that. And if you've had that pattern in your relationship, if that's the way this person has reacted to other things, you may want to go slowly, and you may want to talk more openly with a friend about it. But just be really careful when you're in that really vulnerable place. Don't set yourself up for getting hurt. Hopefully you can talk about it, but if you not, just be wise about that. Pay attention that people may want to be supportive, but generally they don't magically change, and a really dismissive, minimizing person doesn't become instantly supportive. So,
and sometimes your partner may be somebody who never learned how to deal with grief in a healthy manner, and so you're kind of left on your own to figure it out, or, as you said, find maybe a close friend or somebody to work through it, or reach out to a counselor or somebody if need be. But those are things that you can't blame yourself for, right? So just tread lightly and open up as much as you think you can. And then if that doesn't feel like a comfortable thing to do, or a safe thing to do, then find an outlet somewhere else. Or, as we've said before, right? Journaling and writing and finding music or other avenues, reading about, the loss of a dog from somebody else's perspective. Those kinds of things can help.
I think it's easy to misinterpret sometimes as well what they're doing, just because it doesn't feel helpful to you, but they're thinking they're being helpful. So it might be leaving you entirely alone or giving you your space. And for you, you're the type of person that I need you to be here with me and help. And they think they're helping. They really do. For them, that would be their answer is, I don't want the pressure of having somebody else kind of during this time. So it's really important to at least acknowledge, maybe I'm maybe it's my interpretation of what they're doing that is making me so upset with the way that they're reacting. And
these, as we're talking, these are everyday argument. Like this is like,
Yes.
this isn't just grief, right? This is like everyday relationship stuff. So it's just that much more critical, I think, when you're, going through something so tough. But I think being quick to judge or, quick to hurt or, thinking somebody's snubbing you because they're leaving you alone for a little while just to be with yourself and your own thoughts, but you're taking it off as, in a way that it's, oh, well, they don't love me anymore. They're not here hovering over me like I need them to. But yeah, for sure. And
Well,
then,
I think it's also sometimes easy to, because you're hurting so much and you want to make sense of this situation that just doesn't make sense. It's easy because it's the closest person around you to
mhm,
blame that other person. Like
yeah,
even if you rationally know it is not their fault, you kind of want to put a neat little bow on the situation entirely, and it's easy to, well, it was obviously your fault, you were here too, and it's your fault. Like, that that's not true, but I think it's one of those things
yeah.
that can.
I can't handle things like this. You're always the one who makes all the decisions, and
Yep.
you just made the worst one, or it should have been, you should have made it sooner, or, we should have taken the dog to the vet a year ago, or,
Yep.
any of those kinds of things. It's crazy what we do. Sometimes I think that feeds into that anger aspect where we were talking about last time, how that makes you feel like you have a little bit of control
Yep.
in a situation where you're not in control. So kind of playing the blame game. And then of course, as soon as you blame the other person, they're going to blame you right back. They're going to blame you right back.
And it doesn't make you really feel any better. Like,
No.
you're just trying to lay this terrible feeling at somebody else's feet, but you really haven't gotten rid of that terrible feeling. It's something you're going to have to work, and you've just compounded it a little bit because you knew you were being like, oh, that's not really fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and then one of the things that can be really hard on a relationship is sometimes the other person really did do something
Yeah.
that led to the
Yeah.
loss. We've talked in terms of death in the series, but sometimes the loss is that the dog gets out of the house or gets out of the yard and you never see them again.
Yeah.
So, they leave the gate open and either the dog disappears or it gets hit or they do the wrong medicine or whatever. They don't take them to the vet when they said they would. And so, it's really easy to go into that place of resentment. That takes some hard looks, and sometimes you have to have some help in working through that.
Yeah.
Because that's something that can just really sit and fester if you're not careful.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to say, and I'm going to have to talk in stereotypes here, and I'm sorry, but sometimes stereotypes are there because
There's truth to them.
our experience, there's some truth to
Yeah. There's truth.
I like to say that stereotypically for men in our culture, the only time they're allowed to be sad is when their team loses the Super Bowl or if their dog dies.
Mm.
It is like the death of a dog is the one completely accepted grief and sadness for God. And it is the one time when a man is not going to be ridiculed by another guy for crying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the one exception to the rule.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that happens when that's true, when you're not used to dealing with those kinds of feelings, it's hard and it's awkward and you don't know what to do and you don't know what all this is about. And even though it's okay, it feels kind of not okay. So I think, if you've got a husband who has his own reactions, he may not be like rising to the occasion perfectly.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to figure out his stuff too.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure. And one of the things you were talking about, kind of blaming the other person, and because there's something, the situation may have come about because of something somebody did or didn't do. I think also too, just blaming yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many times um, for me, that's almost one of the default thoughts that runs into my head, that I have to kind of talk myself through it and go, no, you did everything you could. You were there. You made all the best decisions that you could for the time. But I think just blaming yourself too, and it closes you off from your partner to be able, because there's nothing they can do to change your mind when you're in that state, at least at that time, except being able to talk it through and say, hey, you did everything you could. It's not your fault, and all that. So I think the blame can go in all kinds of different directions, and feeling bad about yourself or your partner. It just will drive that wedge again between the two of you. So being able to
And
open
really,
up.
as we've talked about earlier, that blaming is a form of the kind of bargaining stage that we talk about with grief. It's not the kind of bargaining of, oh, if they get well, I'll do such and such. But it's that feeling that if I can figure out how to get everything exactly right,
Yeah.
my dog's never going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And, as we all know, it's not true, but we get in that place of, do anything to avoid having to go through this again.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you, Olga, so much for sharing this episode. We really appreciate you being here today and sharing our conversation with others. We really hope it helps both you and the people that you are closely connected to. So I guess, we've kind of talked about all the downsides, right? Or all the ucky feelings and, situations that we can be in relationships or with partners or spouses or friends that, in which, things are not exactly as neatly addressed as we'd like them to be, or to go as smoothly as we want them to be. What other things can we do to kind of resolve or move through or find that connection together? And even if we're on different planes or, waves of grief.
One of the things is to recognize that you may have, or you will probably need to have, kind of different timings of grief. That when one of you is like really deep into it and it's hit with a wave, it really helps if the other one is not quite that deep. They can be the reassuring, and then it will flip. The other one gets triggered by something, and you can step up and reassure them. The other thing I want to say is it's really healthy not to expect your relationship to have everything you need. And to recognize this person's going through something too. Mm-hmm. And it can really be an incredible bonding experience to go through it together. When you're able to support each other, it can really, that kind of vulnerability and support can really, really bring you closer together. But it also helps, and it's one of those generally true things, that no one relationship can give us everything we need emotionally. That's why it's important to have really great friends. Mm-hmm. And so to expect support and to want to have support from that person who's closest to you, absolutely, that's completely natural and understandable. But not to expect them to be everything for you. To look and find some of those other outlets, whether you're doing it through journaling, whether you're talking to a friend or someone else. Don't put that kind of pressure on your relationship.
Mm-hmm. For sure. I think for me, I think just being able to offer a sense of hope with one another. I think a sense of hopelessness is really what I think I was feeling. And certainly the day that Clover was diagnosed with cancer, you feel like, oh, it's all over. And then, once we lost her, it's kind of that same feeling comes back. But But I think just being able to provide, a little avenues of light, bring hope back into your day, and, hopefully into the relationship as well. But I think working together towards something that's meaningful or that has value to you as a couple or as a a friendship. Um, I think that's helpful because you're able to kind of do it in parallel to the grief. So it might not be directly related to losing your dog, but I think being able to have something to focus on that is hopeful or meaningful or adds value or, has a stronger, as strong a place, as maybe the love of your dog, right? So that you can have something to look forward to again, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I think too, sorry, go ahead, Peggy.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think too, sometimes just being able to recognize the differences between how you're reacting to the grief, and then finding a couple of the things, like if you can have that little lifeline of, oh, I feel that same way too. Like having those little bits of time or little bits of pieces where you do know that you come together on this particular thing, or you both, oh, I do want to watch a funny movie, not a sad movie, like whatever. It might be the smallest thing, but those little things that you can kind of come together on, that, yep, these are the things that we can kind of do. These are our little touchstones that can help us along the way.
And something else is that I think sometimes it's easier to identify concrete things instead of feelings. So, for example, I miss hearing his collar jingle as he runs to the house. And the other person can say, yeah, man, I really miss that too. So that's where you make your connections. They may or not be able to say, I'm feeling really sad, or I feel an emptiness. But they can say, man, I miss the goofy way that, she got into the garbage every night. So to use those really concrete examples.
Yeah.
And then Hillary, to build on what you said, if they suggest maybe like, let's just go out to dinner, let's go see a movie. That doesn't mean that they didn't love the dog and they don't care.
Right.
It just means that sometimes you have to come up for air.
Yeah, gotta take a break.
Yeah, and sometimes and something like a movie, as long as it's not like Old Yeller or something like that. Read the reviews real carefully before you go. Going some funny, stupid movie, it gives you a really good break. It allows you that moment just to come up for air, and it also helps the both of you to kind of reconnect with, there is more to our life together than this grief experience. And the grief is overwhelming right now, but that other part's still there, and we're going to get back to it.
Right. And if you can't have a date night, or you can't get together, maybe your work schedules are such, or the kids, soccer schedule is such that you can't get away. I think just purposely taking 15 minutes in the day, if it's the first thing in the morning when you're having coffee together, or if it's late at night, as you're saying good night, brushing your teeth, or if it's, at dinner time, as you're sitting at the table, just opening up, asking questions. You don't have to talk about the loss, just kind of sharing each other's experiences of the day, or whatever it is that you want to open up about. No advice. You're not giving advice to anybody on anything. You're not trying to fix them. You were talking about somebody who, has that Mr. or Ms. Fix-It style, right? They love their partner. They want that person to feel better. And here's what you're going to do to get over it. Just none of that. Just really kind of giving each other regular check-ins every day, where You can say whatever you'd like, but just knowing that that other person is there, right? Sometimes when you're hurting, you don't need anything. You don't need a hug. You don't need anyone to talk to you, but you just want them there. You just want to know that they're there for you. So I think kind of reinforcing that, getting back into practice with that, I think would help strengthen that bond and that relationship, regardless of where you are in that grief cycle or that grief process.
I think too, for me, when we lost Tatum, just life situation, it wasn't possible to be physically in the same place and be able to share some of those at the sort of most traumatic time of the grief. We were going through it completely separately, me and my husband. So what I kind of learned was after he was back and we came back to the situation together, you kind of still need to, like, you're both a little bit further along, but you still need to find those touch points and figure out how to talk to each other. So, I mean, even if you feel like, well, it's been, 6 months, it's been whatever the case may be, you'll still find that, like, being able to touch back to it and finding those touch points are really important to kind of keep you back on the same. It's a big deal, and you both went through it, so you do need to figure out, okay, what are the parts how has this changed us, and how do we talk to each other about it now?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent point, because I could see, military families, right?
Yep.
Their spouses overseas for a long period of time, and maybe the dog dies with the person's gone, and they're not even able to be there for that other person, that their partner. And then to come back and an extended period of time has passed, and you almost don't want to bring it up, right? Because it's something you want to kind of move past, but it's really critical to be able to open up together about it and share where you are in your grief and recognize that you are in it together. Even though that time has gone by, you're still there for each other. You're still, you can relate to the situation together, right? Because you both were guardians of that, that dog, as a member of your family, and kind of sharing that loss together is important.
And this is one of those places where stories can be so powerful and so important. If you have a spouse or a partner who's deployed and the dog dies, and after you've come back together, share the story not only of what it was like for you, of having to go to the vet or deal with it, and you get to tell your story, but also what it was like for them to be that far away and to not have a chance to say goodbye. Stories are just really, really powerful.
Right.
And I was thinking, as you were talking earlier about connecting with each other sometime during the day, which is a really great recommendation for relationship at any time. But also, if you have children, it can be a great thing of just normalizing the experience. To sit around the table, or when you guys are all together, and to say, let's name one thing that we really loved about Alfred the dog. And then the kids can do that. What's one thing you really miss about Alfred the dog? What's one story that always makes you laugh? And the stories can be just really, really powerful and wonderful vehicles for healing.
Right. Well, and then I was thinking too, about spouses that are, apart during this time. When they reconnect, you can create a memorial together, and that could be the part that you share, at the same time, regarding the loss. So you could go out in the backyard and create a nice little area dedicated, to the life of your dog, as a place where you can, sit and read a book and reflect and stuff. Or you could, find a special urn or give to a special charity or do something in honor of your dog together now that you're back, as a team. So just kind of coming up with another idea of things that might benefit from, being able to share that experience together.
Yeah.
Even though you were apart.
Um,
go ahead, Peggy.
Yeah, I've got one more thing that just occurred to me to circle back around. I just talked about how powerful stories can be. Stories can also be detrimental because we can create them in our minds. We make up stories about what's going on. And so you may feel like you're not getting what you need or your partner isn't supporting you in your grief. And it's good to take a look at what's the story you've created around that. What's the story of your expectation of what it was going to look like? And is that consistent with the way this person has been in every other part of your life? So look at what your expectation is. What's the story? But also be really careful about creating a story in your head about them. About their caring or not caring without actually talking about it. Because those stories can also be really powerful. And then, we start reacting out of the story, and the poor other person doesn't have a clue as to what their story has become.
Right.
So just, pay attention to what are you telling yourself about this? What scenario did you create in your mind as the way that you think it ought to go? And maybe that's the way you need it to go. But again, as we've been talking about, it's important to talk about that and to share that. And the best thing is when you can get on the same page. You may color with different colored crayons, but you're on the same page.
Right. So for anybody that's listening to this now or will watch the replay, we have had some folks that have brought this topic up as something that is important to them. So, they were thinking that the loss of their dog would be something that they could bond over and get closer, but it just isn't turning out that way. What do you recommend for, we've talked about some things to try, but if there really is that chasm or the other person is really unwilling to, open up or communicate or, try to understand, what does somebody do in that situation?
This can be a really great time to do some work with a couples counselor. Sometimes people think that the only time to go to couples counseling is when your relationship is on life support. But the reality is that at a time like this, a juncture like this, it's a really great time to go and have a third party, have an objective third party that can help you talk to each other and who can hold a safe space for talking to each other. Because it's one of those things that if you don't work it through, it can be like that splinter under the skin of the relationship and just fester and fester and fester. So, you don't have to spend 6 years doing it.
Right.
But to go and talk for a little bit with a third party, a good couples counselor, and just to say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and we need help getting through this struggle.
Now, if the other person isn't willing to go initially, you can go on your own, correct? And just at least have that, as you said, a third party, somebody else to kind of open up to and listen and guide you through, your current situation. Yeah. So it's at least something else that you can try. And hopefully they can give you tools and techniques and ideas on how to bring your partner into the conversation so that the three of you can kind of work through those more tougher discussions together and hopefully break down the walls and regain each other's love and understanding and companionship. So.
And, sometimes it can help a little bit when you're able to say, look, this may not make any sense to you, but here's how I feel.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This may seem like I'm just like totally over the edge. I'm
Right.
not. This is how I feel right now.
Right. And this is hard. It's not an easy, we can't expect, even if we're going through something that difficult where the chasm is that wide between us, it's going to take time to heal that and bring you closer together. So there's always hope, or there's often hope, that things can get back. And certainly if the two of you are willing to listen and reach out and be open and honest with one another, then there absolutely is hope for things to improve.
And there may be, depending on the situation, there may be an instance where the chasm is so wide and you're feeling so vulnerable. This is one of those dog losses that just has kicked you in the gut completely.
Yeah.
And so it's almost too tender to really work on relationship stuff in the midst of it.
Yeah.
And that's one of those times where you say, okay, we're going to go, we'll do our lives like we do our lives. And you reach out to friends, you talk to somebody, a third party if you need to, for the grief, of processing the grief.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're a little bit steadier on your feet, you can come back around and say, hey, we need to talk about what happened back there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's so much of a crisis, it's just so painful you can't really touch it yet.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a great strategy, I think, to share with folks.
And I think it can kind of spiral into, I don't even want to bring that part, like I don't want to work on that part of the relationship. This isn't the right time. But if you try to do some of that stuff too soon or when you're too vulnerable, it'll just all come out, because that's just how both of you are hurting. And it's like, okay, let's try to give it the best circumstances that we can to have a successful conversation. And that might mean not talking for a little while, or talking to other people first, and then coming back to talking about it together.
Well, this was such a really good discussion today. I'm so glad we had some wonderful people joining with us. Thank you so much, everybody. Peggy, did you have any other kind of closing remarks about this topic that you wanted to share while we kind of close things off? I think, we covered a lot, but I think people shouldn't give up hope, right? I think there are ways to get through it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process. And sometimes you just, because grief is a process and you don't want to deal with another process on top of it, let's just take things slowly and listen to what you need in any given moment and keep working on that process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and reach out. We're here. There's lots of Facebook groups that have, for dog loss support, or just love whatever particular type of dog. Of course, we're all hound lovers, but we love all dogs and dog lovers. So, there's all kinds of people to reach out to that you can, if they're not, an arm's length away, there's certainly, a Wi-Fi connection away.
And speaking of reaching out, Peggy, if people would like to reach out to you for more guidance on this topic or others, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
You can find me at heartcallings.com. That's my website.
Great. And we'll definitely put the link to that site in this replay so that people can find it as well.
And if you look, there's a little tab up at the top that says Lost a Pet.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Please feel free to reach out to Peggy. As you know, she's just amazing, and we're so grateful and glad to have her with us on these sessions, and definitely take advantage of of all her knowledge and expertise. She's a great person, obviously, to reach out to. I was just curious if everybody's received, just a wonderful insight. I know today was just a great conversation. Please give us some hearts and likes if you liked what we were talking about today and learned something good and valuable. And if so, we'd also love it if you share this episode or the replay with anyone you may know that would be benefit from it as well. Next week, it's our last in the series. So Thursday, 2:00 Eastern Standard Time. It's May 2nd. We'll be here with Peggy, and we'll have our conversation about how to handle help that isn't all that helpful. So that's going to be an interesting topic. I'm curious about that one.
And I would encourage you over the next week that if you have examples from your own experience where people tried to be helpful and it really wasn't for you, please share those on the page, and that will we can draw on that, and we certainly want to hear your stories as well. Right,
for sure. Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And then don't forget Peggy's free ebook. We have it. It launched, was available last week. A lot of wonderful people have been able to download a copy of it. It is only available for a limited time, so we really want to make sure that everybody in our wonderful We Heart Hounds family gets the opportunity to get it. It is only for us. Peggy's so generous and put a book together just for our wonderful group, and want to make sure that you get a copy of that. Now we'll put a link to that and to Peggy's contact information. All that good stuff will be in our replay, so be sure and click on those links and get that the ebook before it's no longer available. And I guess that's it. Peggy, would you like to just say any closing remarks before we go?
No, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to do this, and grateful for all of you folks, and look forward to next week.
Sounds great.
In the meantime, we definitely hope that you guys can feel the love and support that we're sending across the miles to you. And thank you so much for being a part of this. I really do think that it's immensely helpful to have such a caring community. We all benefit from it. So thank you so much for all the support that you guys are given.
Absolutely. And thank you, Renee. No worries if you weren't able to participate. That's totally fine. As you said, you can always watch the replay and then just share if you know of anybody else that could benefit from this one or any of the previous ones that we've done. That's what they're out here for. They're for anybody that will really hopefully make a positive difference in their life. That's really what we're all about here. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody. Have a great, wonderful rest of your day, and we will be happy to see you next Thursday.